It's like when you spare in my rush to get your extra pen on your desk.
I do not, and I forgot to do my brush, I forgot my glasses. I can't see.
Perfect.
You have to have a spare later. Yes. At least bring yours, so then you can go where.
Okay. Service contract, I need your city water. You can, I'll take my, I'll get it back, we're gonna do that for my. We will.
Just a cheap one, so you don't. See, this is a pen.
It's a Vivian Davis, it's a poem.
It's a, well, no. it's- No, that's a cheap pen.
All right, folks, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. We can start with a moment of silence, please. Stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a reminder, if you happen to have cell phone on you, it's either off or on silent, please. City Clerk, can you go ahead and make roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Williams, Reed, Jackson, Lawler,
Here.
Davis,
Here,
French,
Here.
and Mayor Snyder.
Here. Do I have a motion to approve of the agenda?
So moved.
support.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Alright. I will go on down. And I do apologize, folks, I don't have my glasses, so some of this may take me a little bit.
It's,
Anybody in the gallery would like to stand and address council in regards to an agenda item? You still have to stand, just give us your name and address, and 3 minutes is yours.
Good evening, Dave Atchison, 108 West Erie Street here in Albion. Now, I want to address the proposal to obligate the city to spend more money to hire another attorney. I strongly urge all of you to vote no. Don't authorize spending more money to hire another attorney to go into court and attempt to defend an independent position. Do the right thing, reappoint the 4 officials who were removed, have the city attorney settle this matter out of court. Every day that goes by, the cost of the city is going up. And we're all watching more of our tax dollars getting spent because 4 members of council made a mistake. 4 members of council violated state law, our city charter, the bylaws for the EDC. And as a result, just as the city attorney advised you, likely to get sued, subject to being sued. I think we all recall the response of Councilwoman Jackson, which is let them sue. Well, we're getting sued. We're getting sued because of the decision that was made by 4 members of this council. It wasn't to do something for the betterment of the city. It wasn't to discharge the duties of their office in a impartial manner. It was to retaliate against 4 members of the EDC that made a decision and in a manner which 4 members of this council didn't agree with. That does not give this council the right to remove appointed public officials. You have legal opinions from 2 attorneys, the city attorney and the attorney of record for the EDC, both telling you you do not have the authority to remove those 4 officials. Went ahead with it. City attorney told you you're likely to get sued, you're getting sued. Settle this matter out of court. Don't spend more of our tax dollars for this. And I would suggest that the folks that brought this issue forward and have created this situation have a vested interest in hiring an attorney to go to defend their actions. I think they should recuse themselves from voting on this. Thank you.
Anybody else in the gallery that would like to stand and address council in regards to an agenda item? All right. So we are moving. We don't have to. Do I have a motion to approve of the city attorney retaining Fahey Schultz for the Haas versus Albion lawsuit?
So moved.
Support.
We have questions or comments in regards to this item. Councilman French.
Thank you. I would appreciate a comment from the law firm partners, outlining the rationale given our at previous meetings for why we are moving forward with retaining Fahey Schultz.
Before we hand it over, I just want to remind council, the bulk of what was discussed was in closed session, so outside of that, the rationale, I don't think can be shared, disclosed in the open meeting, since that was discussed
Okay.
during our closed session.
I guess, can we ask Lars if that is a correct statement?
That is accurate, Mayor. Thank you.
So then, Lars, we are not able to comment on this topic.
As far as ongoing discussions go, Madam Mayor, given what City Manager Snyder said about the subject matter of the item on the agenda, given that that was in a closed session, really any discussion related to the rationale provided to the city council as a result of that particular item would have to effectively stay within the confines of what was discussed at the closed session. And given that it was in a closed session, it wouldn't therefore be able to be discussed now in the in an open setting.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
City Clerk Domingo?
Councilmember Lawler,
No.
Davis,
Will you please,
So this is,
state
the motion is to retain Fahey Schultz as outside counsel for the lawsuit Haas versus Albion. This is given approval or not.
No, we have a quorum. We have 4 out of 7, but it requires a unanimous vote. It's no. You can vote if you want.
No, so this will just be a regular vote. This is just a regular vote.
Right, you need a majority of council, which is 4 votes, whether they're absent or not. You still need 4 votes to win. And since Councilman Lawler voted no, we can vote whatever we want, it will be defeated.
It's not just the majority from the forum that's here.
No,
Lars?
The question would ultimately have to be answered, and each council member and member of the city council would be entitled to vote yes or no, regardless of what Councilwoman Lawler did vote. But again, as City Councilman French did indicate, it would require a 4 approval vote in order for the item to ultimately be approved.
I'm going to, because I thought this was discussion, I'm going to vote no.
French,
yes,
and Mayor Snyder.
No. All right, next is our discussion on the 2024 budget. City Manager Snyder or Director Clark, you want to leave?
Yes,
Thank
thank
you so much.
you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Clark. So in front of you, Director Clark has provided you for budget reports for the remaining funds for the proposed budget for 2024. Similar to our first work session, I will hand it over to Director Clark. He will guide us through each of the packets, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, council. Thank you, mayor. I have everything for the other funds except for the enterprise funds, the water and sewer fund. I'm gonna need a little bit more time because there's a lot going on in that sewer fund with the bonds. And I want to make sure it's right, so I'm gonna need maybe an extra week. So, but the other ones I have done. The other, about a week and a half ago, I was here and I submitted the general fund budget. Again, that was a fund that had multiple departments in it. Today, we are doing, the other funds beside the general fund and the enterprise funds. The first packet I want you to take a look at on the cover sheet, it says major and local street funds. One thing about the other funds, each fund stands on its own. It's basically like a separate accounting books, basically. You can't commingle funds between funds. So as you look at this, think of these separate funds as setting by themselves. They keep their own books. And so we'll start with the local street fund. Or excuse me, the major street fund. So again, I'll go over the columns. Column 1 is the 2021 activity. Column 2 is the 2022 activity. That's just there for reference. The column 3 is the 2023 amended budget that was passed for this year. Column 4 is up through 9 months actual activity. Column 5 is the projected year-end numbers that I put together or had help putting together. And the last column, the 6th column, is the 2024 requested budget. So as we look at the revenues for the major street fund, I budgeted $871,414. I anticipate in column 5 that the total revenues will be $954,332, which is an increase of around a little under 80 or a little over $80,000, which is good. The main reason there is the state shared revenue for gas and weight tax came in a little bit higher than what I anticipated. I budgeted 796,000, and I anticipated coming in at 852. The rest of the numbers are just about the same, except for the interest. I budgeted 19,500, but I anticipate getting 50,100 in interest, which is very nice. And for next year, I budgeted 50,000 for that. So for next year's budget, I have 964,500 for total revenues for the major street fund. Going through the departments, Department 454 is Act 51 non-motorized. I budgeted for zero expenses, but we did have a little bit of activity. It was 1,510, and for next year I budgeted 1,750. Department 461 is the maintenance department, maintaining the major streets, and I budgeted for 2023 $389,370. It came in at 377,316. Which is just about what we thought we were going to be. And for next year, I budgeted 366,225. So when you take the revenues, or there was no revenues there for that department. So that came out just about where I thought we were going to be. Department 465 is traffic services. For 2023, I budgeted 3,325. Actual expenses came in at 1,305. Next year, I budget for 1,365. Main difference on that was the salaries and wages and the benefits that were associated with them were down. Department 467, which is winter maintenance for the major street funds, or the major streets. I budgeted 44,855. They came in at 34,267. Which is about 10,000, a little over 10,000 lower. And for 2024, I budget 37,660. No really main difference there. Department 486, which is the I-94 truck line. There are revenues that we get reimbursed from the state. I budgeted 24,000. I think they're gonna come in at 1,400. Again, that's based on the work that we do on the I-94 truck line. And then for 2024, I budgeted 20,000. The expenses for that department. For 2023, I budgeted 18,555. They're going to come in just about that. 18,585 or 18,855. So that's just about what I budgeted. And for next year, I anticipate 19,690. So total profit for that department 486, I thought was going to be 5,445, but it actually is going to be a loss of 4,855. Next year, we're just going to about break even based on my budget numbers. Department 487, which is the M99 truck line, same situation. We do get reimbursed for the maintenance that we do on those roads from the state. I budgeted 21,500. For 2023, they're going to come in about 13,500. Next year, I budgeted for 21,000. The expenses for that department, I budgeted for 27,055. They came in at 24,883. Not really a big difference there. And for next year, I budgeted for 25,680. So I anticipated a loss.
Director Clark.
Yeah.
So you've written for this particular fund of $4,600 deficit in the plan. Is there,
We're at,
I'm looking at the net revenue appropriations for account 487.
yeah,
I see negative 4680.
see what you're at here. So,
I'm in the Department 487 and 99 trunk.
yeah,
I'm down at the bottom of that, the last line of that account is net of revenues over appropriations. And you've got, what I see there is a deficit of 4680
So the 2024.
on the 2024 requested budget.
right here, 4680. Okay.
So my question is, why are we writing a budget that's got $4,680 deficit?
Well, I basically have to go by what I think the revenues are going to be on top and then what the expenses are going to be.
Right, but those aren't reconciled. Right? Presumably, unless we know that there's additional funds coming to that account or we're overestimating our expenses, then we're building in a deficit budget for this account,
For this department.
for this department.
Well, last year I did the same thing.
I understand. So my question is why? And if you did, and you had good reason, that's fine. Are we deficit spending every year in this department?
Not necessarily, no,
Okay,
no. But I could take, I could retake a look at that. And maybe I can lower the materials and supplies. But I have to take a look at that. So I'll get back to you on that.
sure. I'm comfortable with a $4,600 deficit. I'm just trying to figure out in your budgeting process. When I budget, this is what I got coming in, that's how much I have to spend. And I understand we can move, you said at the beginning, you're not allowed to move money into lumps, so.
Well, this is all in one fund. This is
Yeah, the
just a
202 fund, right, so. I'm just trying to figure out whether or not, given the budget numbers you've given for this and other accounts as well, that, are we gonna end up, in the 202 major street fund, since we get a lot of money from the state,
Right.
are we not asking for enough if we're gonna be overall deficit in 202?
Well, we're not gonna be in a deficit for the fund 202. We may be in a deficit for that department, but
Okay.
again, I can take a look at that and see if I can make some adjustments. Maybe my revenue amounts are not enough,
Right.
but there's some things that we do to those truck lines that the state will not reimburse. It's not a certain category of expense.
Got it. Thank you.
But I will take a look at that. Okay, so now we're at Department 488, this is M99 truck line. I budgeted for 11,400. I think we're gonna get 11,500. Next year I budget for 11,000. The expenses for that department. I budgeted for 14,880. They came in at 15,426. Next year I anticipate 15,280. Again, that's a deficit, but I will take a look at that. Transfer out. Part 965 is 275,000. We have done that every year. So for 2024, it's the same thing. This is going to the other street fund, local street fund to help pay for those services that has been done for the last 4 years. And so for the total fund itself, the total revenues that I budgeted for were 928,314. I anticipate them coming in at 993,332. And for next year, 1,016,500. I budgeted for expenses of 774,255. They came in at 749,747. Next year, I anticipate expenses of 742,650. So the total revenues over expenses that I budgeted for were $154,089. I think the fund will come in at $243,585, which is about 90,000 higher, or higher. And for next year, I anticipate revenues over appropriations of $273,850.
If I can just weigh in before we go, if you look back, Director Clark, you mentioned it, that we're only able to be reimbursed for certain levels. You can see that we, just from years past, that our revenues are lower, and that could just be, excuse me, depending on if we have major storm, any big storms, we did not really have a lot of snow this past winter. I think we had the one big storm at the beginning of the year. That's where we really get a lot of the revenues from, and we have more plowing, more maintenance along those roadways, so it is lower than years past, but that's just due to the level of work that we've had to report, to the state to be reimbursed.
So that's for the major fund, Fund 202. Now I'll look at the local street fund. These are maintenance on our local streets. Fund 203. Total revenues I budgeted for 2023 were 297,000. I anticipate the revenues to be 324,520. I budgeted for 341,920 for next year. The main difference there is some of it is the interest on the investments, and the state share gap and wage tax is up a little bit more. I budgeted 278, it came in at 295. So that's good. That's up about 27,000. Department 461, which is the maintenance of the local streets. I budget 442,575. They actually came in at 534,120. The main difference in the increase is additional salaries and wages and benefits that go along with it. The materials and supplies were up about 8,000. And the equipment rental, I budgeted for 90,000. It came in at 158,000. For next year, I budget total expenditures or appropriations at 528,265. Department 465 is traffic services. for the local streets. I budgeted for 3,805 for 2023. It came in at 4,555. And for next year, I budgeted for 4,360. Department 467, which is the winter maintenance. 2023, I budgeted for 51,240. The actual numbers, I believe, are going to come in at 44,982. That's a savings of about 6,000. Next year, I anticipate expenditures to be 41,315. So that should go down just a little bit, and that's mainly due to the wages being a little bit lower.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the benefits.
Councilman Raven.
Before we go too far, I hate to ask you, what are traffic services?
These are like for traffic lights, non-motorized, and again, I'm not the street guy.
Okay.
My street guy is gone, so I had to kind of do this without Kevin. Kevin's the street guy, but he's now no longer here. But I believe it's for non-motorized, which is the traffic services, the lights, maybe for the lights. Yeah. And then the transfer in from the major street fund, 275,000. That's revenue to this fund to help handle the costs. And then transfer out for next year is going to be zero because the loan was paid off in 2024. So for the actual fund itself, Fund 203, local street fund, the budget that was passed for 2023, I budgeted for 572,000 in revenues. They actually are going to come in at 599,520. And for next year, 660,920. The appropriations, I budgeted for 498,805. And they came in at 584,842, which are a little bit higher. Next year, they're going to be 573,940. So total profit for that was budgeted for was 73,195. Actual revenues over appropriations is going to be 14,690 or 678. And then for next year, I budgeted for 42,980. Revenues over expenditures. So that is the local street fund. The next fund is Fund 365, which is a sidewalk program fund. We really just had just a little bit of activity in this fund. Of course, the revenues are all interest. And there were some materials and supplies purchased for 6,144. I budget for zero. Professional services, I budgeted for 4,000. There were none. And then the transfer out was the transfer from the sidewalk fund to help for the North Albion and the Haven Road improvements that are shown in major street fund improvements, which is the next fund. And there's no transfers anticipated for 2024. And the interest is down because the 33,000 transfer took up most of the cash that was in that fund. So total revenues I budgeted for 4,000. They came in at 1,170. Next year I anticipate 50. Total appropriations came in at 30. I budgeted for 37,118. They came in at 39,263. So, and next year there's no appropriations that were budgeted. So the total budget for 2023 was going to be a loss of 36,118. Most of that was transfer out. And then the actual was negative 38,093. Next year I anticipate $50 revenues over appropriations. So that fund is just about done, let's say.
And if, council, if you can recall, we created the subcommittee to get this fund depleted. We used majority of the funds to replace a lot of the sidewalk ramps to make them ADA compliant across all throughout the city. And then we used the remainder. It was not enough to do another large project, but we used it towards the North Albion project and then the, Haven Road and Burger Street project as well.
And most of those supplies, that $6,000 number for the supplies were for sidewalk improvements that were done during the year. All right, now we're at Fund 450 with the street improvement fund, a lot of activity in this fund. We do collect property taxes. You can see the revenue stream there. I budgeted last year for $3,161,462. But included in that budget were the North Albion Street Bridge project and the Haven Road project. There's a footnote in there. I actually budgeted the whole thing because the paperwork I had showed that it was gonna possibly be done, both projects in 2023. But basically, only the Haven Road project was partially completed. Next year, it's gonna be pretty much just finishing up the Haven Road project and doing the North Albion Street Bridge. So these are grant funds to cover that. You'll see the expenses below. So
Really? They're not finishing the Haven Road project this year.
No, so that should still be set to be completed this year. I know they're working to remove or relocate roughly 2 to 3 poles, and then they are still anticipating they'll be able to do the pavement before the plants close. I received an update today that they need AT&T to come out to remove a few wires that are still left on the poles that need to be pulled out. Once that's done, they will bring in the contractor to lay the asphalt. Or lay that final layer of asphalt. The only work that would need to be done on this project, they would probably go through, they'll do like the walkthrough, but then if any other cleanup, depending on when that gets done, that may be pushed to next year.
So those are the grant funds that I anticipate coming in 2023 and 2024. The total grants money that I anticipate for North Albion Street Bridge is $2,217,280 for the Haven Road project, $790,602, but it's split between 2 separate years. And if I look at the other numbers, the current property taxes came in a little bit higher than what I anticipated. Everything else looks about the same, except the grant is split up between 2 years instead of 1. Federal grants other. This is the ARPA money that was sent over in 2023 to help with the North Albion Street Bridge project. It lowered what the general fund had to transfer over for the year. And for next year, the $161,802 is also ARPA money that I have put there. There's $361,802 of ARPA money left at the end of the year. $205,000 is going to the general fund, and the rest of it is going to go over to help with the North Albion and the Haven Road project. So not only are we going to get the grant money, but we're also using some of the ARPA money to help with that project. So it's going to be $161,802, and for 2023 it was $168,770. Local community stabilization from the state, I anticipated 45,000, came in at 58,000. Next year, I anticipate 53,000. Interest on the investment, I anticipated 10,000. There's going to be about 14,000 coming in next year, I anticipate. And then I just found it here, I'm going to have to add the number for.
I just want to point out, so at the top of that, it says current property taxes, so that's what we collect on the road millage, so. it looks like we're projected to bring in 283,000 that goes toward, specifically towards our local roads. So I know we all hear complaints about the road condition, but this is like the figure of what we have to work with on top of any additional grants or whatever that we receive. So we do rely heavily on the grant funding to be able to tackle any major road projects.
For their interest, it's gonna be close to what we got in 2023, maybe a couple $1,000s higher. I just missed that number when I was. Looking at it in 2024. Okay, the Department 500, street improvement miscellaneous. We do have a project where we're going to do 7 bridge maintenance, 7 bridges for preventive maintenance. I got these figures from Mickey. 27,300 is anticipated to be expensed for 2023, and then 27,300 is expected to be spent for 2024, but I don't believe everything's gonna be done until 2025 based on the information that he gave me. So I went ahead and budgeted for that. Now we're down to the North Albion Street Bridge and Haven Road project. This is Department 530. The total estimated construction cost for the North Albion Street Bridge project is going to be $2,333,979. The Haven Road is going to be $1,155,000. This has been paid over 3 years. If you add all those numbers up, you should get the total project cost for both of $3,488,979. $196,760 was spent in 2022. I anticipate $155,817 spent in 23, and then $14,948. Those are for professional fees, which are the engineering costs for both projects. The actual construction costs are $3,488,979, and that is spent in 23 for $505,130, and the rest is going to be spent in 2024 for $2,983,849. There's a footnote to explain that. Transfers in for 2023. I do want you to make one note when you look at that footnote that explains the transfer in of $356,528. Where it says 2023 with a dash, it says 205,000. Cross that out. It's only 44,130. The difference between that and what we thought is the ARPA money that we use for 2023. So in effect, the general fund did not have to send over as much as we anticipated because we used some of the ARPA money to lower that figure. The 44,130 should be crossed out. The actual number that was sent from the water fund is 266,840. We make both those corrections. The total amount that was sent over to help the North Albion and Haven Road project, Haven Road project was 356,528. General fund we gave 44,130. The water fund gave 266,840. The sewer fund gave 12,440, and the sidewalk fund gave $33,118. Total was 356,528. So as we look at the total street improvement fund for the year, I anticipated a gain of 20,462. We're actually going to come out a lot better, 858,013. And for next year, I anticipate a loss of $160,335. So the major project and that particular fund is in North Albion street bridge and the pavement road project. That's why we're going to be so high.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate to go back, but I just want to get a clarification. It's on page 8 regarding the sidewalk program,
Page 8.
page 8. So you see, materials and supplies in terms of requested budget, do I understand that there's no budget for sidewalks?
Well, last year I wasn't aware that they were gonna do sidewalk work. And so when they did it this year, I didn't know about it when I did the budget.
Okay,
And that happens sometimes. They don't tell me everything.
okay.
So I think one of the questions is, we're not gonna budget any money for next year, given.
There's no money there.
No, so this fund was created back when we had the sidewalk assessment. Where each home was assessed so much each year to go towards replacing the sidewalk. At some point, I think we revised that the attorney, how that assessment was set up may not have been proper. So at that time, and I don't remember what year it was, the council at the time created the sidewalk subcommittee to identify projects that we could use with the funds that were available in the fund to deplete that fund. So as I said, we did replace a lot of the entrance ramps along the sidewalks throughout the city to make them ADA compliant. So we had planned or intend to deplete this fund until we come up with a new method to address the sidewalks.
You know, I just hear comments in 2023 that, you know, their fund was available and they don't, I mean, a lot of people really don't understand where the money went. They just know that they were assessed the money, but the sidewalk in front of their homes are crumbling.
Yeah.
So, and trying to get a good explanation as to what we can look forward to.
Yes, so the subcommittee at the time voted to replace the entrance ramps because they would benefit the entire community.
Yeah,
The
I remember
community.
you saying that.
So that's why we took that route to deplete this fund. I think we need to identify a different way to address the sidewalks. Right now, they are the property owner's responsibility. So if you have, your sidewalk is crumbled in front of your home, as a property owner, you are responsible for replacing that. I know in other cities, they have programs or processes set up to where the city will repair it, but then the home is still assessed that fee to cover the cost of it. They just don't take it out. We will do the work up front, and then there's either billed or however they're assessed. But this fund was established in the past, we realized that it was not the best method or not necessarily proper. So that's why we work to identify a project that would benefit the entire community.
Could I just add one thing there? We can always ask the major street fund, the major street improvement fund, which got these transfers, to transfer the money back once they have it. What we transfer in doesn't mean it has to stay there forever. It's just like a loan until we get it back. So the water, all these transfers that went into the major street fund to help handle the costs that we're not going to get reimbursed for. Once we are reimbursed through our grants, then we can ask for that money back. And that's something that we could take a look at before we finalize the budget.
You know, I think something should happen because it doesn't sound very good, a homeowner sees their sidewalk and they say, well, you have to repair it. They may not be able to repair the sidewalk and we say, well, there's nothing we can do. So I think at least looking at other options, to at least tell the citizens, we're looking at other options and we may be able to do this or that, rather than there's nothing we can do. That just doesn't go well.
it's not that there's nothing we can do, but we have to be mindful because you can't use public funds on private property. So that's where I think the big hiccup came with the assessment that we had in place. We were essentially using public tax capture dollars to improve areas within that will only serve the property owner. I know there are communities though that do repair the sidewalks, like I said, but then the property value, they're assessed those fees to cover the cost. So I'm happy to look into that further, but that's kind of why the council at the time took the steps to form that subcommittee to deplete the funds that were captured to come up with something that would benefit the whole community.
Okay, so that was the street improvement fund. Fund 452, which is the MDOT reconstruction fund. There's really not a lot of activity there for the last few years since 2021. The only revenues right now are for interest.
I'm sorry, where are you? What page?
Page 11.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, fund 452, the MDOT reconstruction fund. It shows the revenues, just the interest that are revenues. And then, that's pretty much about it for that. So those are the major local street funds. All right, so the next one is the special revenue funds. So the first special revenue fund is Fund 208, which is the recreation fund. We do capture property taxes that are distributed to this particular fund. 2023, I anticipate 186,883. They're actually going to come in at 194,33. Next year, I anticipate 198,644. The next big revenue line is the local community stabilization from the state. I anticipate 35,300, 40,200 came in. I anticipate, and for next year, I anticipate 45,000. Interest, I anticipated 7,300. It's actually going to come in at 13,100. Next year, I anticipate 16,000. So the total budgeted revenues for 23, 232,783. They came in at 248,754. And next year, I anticipate 263,774. The budgeted expenses or the appropriations for Fund 208 Recreation Fund, I budgeted 206,175. They're going to come in about 194,927. Next year, I anticipate 195,960. The major expense inside that fund is the YMCA services payment, contract service payment that we make to Battle Creek. And the rest of that actually came in just about the same. So I anticipated revenues of 232,783. They came in at 248,754. And for the appropriations, I anticipated 206,175. They came in at 194,927. I budgeted for a profit revenues over appropriations of 26,608. They're actually going to come in at 53,827 profit, and next year I anticipate revenues of 263,774, appropriations of 195,960, with revenues over appropriations of 67,814. So that fund is doing good. Pretty straightforward. Fund 226 solid waste fund. Total revenues I anticipated were 352,105. Actual revenues are going to be 391,864. That's an increase of about 40,000, a little under 40,000. The major difference is the interest. I anticipated 21,200. I think it's gonna come in at 48,000. Next year it's gonna be 52,000. And local community stabilization, I anticipated 50,000. I think it's gonna come in at 58,500. Those two numbers are basically the difference, except for the taxes are just about 6,000 higher on top. So total revenues for next year are 404,518. Taxes are up a little bit and the interest is down just a little bit. And are actually up a little bit, but everything else is just about the same. 523, which is a lead pickup. Not much going on there. I anticipated 10,000. Only saw 83 or $83 so far. I anticipate that, and next year I budget for 1,500.
Renting for lead pickup.
Wow, that comes free of charge or something.
What's that?
We don't do leaf pickup as a city anymore, do we? So why are we got $83 on leaf pickup?
I'll have to look into that.
We like, we don't.
I will have to look into that.
At least, yeah, somebody bought bags, yeah.
All right, Department 524, tree dump. I anticipated 15,360 total expenses. They came in at 7,205, which is about half, a little under half. Next year, I anticipate 9,510. That came in a lot better than I thought. Mostly from the salaries and wages were lower, associated with the benefits, and the equipment rental was also lower by $4,000. 528, which is the solid waste department. I budgeted for 172,440. I think it's gonna come in at 149,719. Next year I budgeted for 143,990. So that has a savings there. And that was. The professional services or the contracted services of 65,000. I didn't see anything come through there. That's good. Transfer out. 45,000. That is for 25,000 goes to the general fund for disposal of bushes, grass, limbs, etc. 20,000 goes to the general fund for trash dumpsters. We've been doing that since 2022. So for the fund itself, Fund 226 Solid Waste Fund, I anticipated revenues of 352,105. They came in at 391,864. Next year, I anticipate 404,518. Appropriations, I anticipated we're going to be 243,392. They're going to come in about 202,989, and next year I budgeted for 200,000. So I anticipated revenues over expenses for 2023's budget of 108,713. They're actually going to come in at 188,875, and for 2024, 204,518. That fund is doing fine. All right, Fund 250, really nothing going on there except for collecting interest. These are some old funds that are old loans that were done years ago. Every now and then we seem to get one paid off, get lucky. But right now we just have cash in the bank and we're earning interest on it. All right, Fund 265, Drug Law Enforcement Fund. Had some help with Scott on this. Amended budget. I thought it was gonna be 11,000 for revenues on top. They actually gonna come in at 20,313. I anticipate 14,000. Some of the big difference is the interest. I anticipate 11,000. We're gonna get about 15,250 next year, 14,000. So those are our revenues. Department 333, Drug Law Enforcement. These are expenses. I anticipated 73,600. They actually came in at 183,660. The main difference, there was nothing budgeted for training, and it actually came in at 105,000. And the next year they anticipate 40,000. The equipment is, the other, number that came in higher was the K9 dog. Or K9 line item. I anticipated, I didn't budget for anything, but they actually are gonna spend 25,000, and next year 10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Does that, training, does that include police academy
No,
expenses?
that's,
Thanks, Scott.
so, I don't know if everybody recalls that we brought in $37,000 last year, I think it was. And so we weren't able to really budget for that at the beginning of the year. So a lot of this training stuff that we've been trying to accumulate over time. We bought a lot of ammunition, we bought some ammunition guns this year. We built a lot of training facilities for use. And so that's where all that training money went this year. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, and that revenue that Scott's talking about is on the top of that in 2021.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So it looks like he's spending that over time.
Yeah.
The equipment, I anticipated 50,000, but it only came in at 31,200, next year 30,000. And so it was a large difference, about 110,000, but most of it was in the training and in the K9.
yeah, in the K9 fund, that 25,000 this year was money that was raised by Officer Riley in order to get the K9 we got. So that's why that expenditure was added in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
Federal Drug Law Enforcement, Department 400. I anticipated 10,000. The actual revenue was 37,000. Next year I anticipate 34,000. The expenses for that department, I anticipated 68,500. It actually came in about a little under half of that, 32,655. The main difference was the $20,000 in equipment I budgeted for, nothing was spent. And also the vehicles, 30,000 was budgeted, but we only spent 16,500. So that's the main difference there. Next year, we anticipate 35,000. And then, Department 400. Revenues over expenditures. I anticipated 58,500. But they're actually gonna come on at 4,345. So for a fund itself, overall, I budgeted for 121,100 revenues over expenditures. Actually came in at $159,002 for projected 2023. And next year, we anticipate revenues of 48,000, expenses or appropriations of 138,785, and for a negative revenues over or under expenditures of 90,785.
So that euro should be adjusted, right? Unbalanced adjustment for months zero, that should be 90,785.
Under 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's subtracting it, but it's just not putting a number in there for some reason.
Yeah, I just didn't put
Yeah.
the 98,785
I
there.
don't know why that's there. That's a software error
About software. Or software.
Human error.
there. I can manually change that. But I'll take it. All right, so that was the Fund 265. Now we're on the Albion Building Authority Fund. This is Fund 275. Do you want me to still go over this even though
Yeah.
the board approved?
Yeah, so the
it?
board, ABA, they have reviewed and approved this, so this is just a kind of an overview for council for your final approval.
So, should I go over this line by line or going to? Right, so the DDA budget for 13,800 for revenues. This is, general revenues. The actual revenue is gonna come in at 23,050. The main difference is the interest on the investments. Everything else is the same. Next year, they anticipate 23,250, just because the interest is going up $250. So total revenues for 2023, budget were 13,800. They came in at 23,50, and next year they're gonna be 23,250. Department 260, which is the finance department and our ABA general. These are just the administrative fees that we charge the DDA fund or the Albion Building Authority Fund for keeping track of their books and other administrative services. Rents, you can see, we charge $1 per month per rent, from the Edward Jones. So that's not gonna change year to year. Other revenues, $125, and we look property taxes per month, so that's $1,500 every year. Appropriations for that is just the insurance on the building. That was $265 I budgeted for, came in at $300, next year $315. Next line item 275, 265, 955. This is in miscellaneous, this is actually for summer and winter property taxes. That they pay on the building. And that's pretty consistent there. Nothing in Department 270. Department 271, which is fire and ambulance building rent, $36,000 a year. Comes from two different outfits. Footnote on that. Here on the rent adjustments is for 40%. The Huron Valley Ambulance rent refund per agreement, 40% of the excess revenues over expenditures from the previous year is supposed to be sent back to the Huron Valley Ambulance. For 2023, it's for 3 years because it was never done in 2020, 21, and 2022. That was before my time. I got it all caught up for 2023 and projected what I think it's going to be for 2024. Then the reimbursements and restitutions, that was only in 2021, so there's no activity there for 22, 23, or 24 that I anticipate. And then the appropriations for Department 271, I anticipated 29,350. It's going to come in about 34,710. And for next year, and that's mainly for the building and grounds, repairs and maintenance. And I think that's pretty much most of it. And I think there's a few electrical, water, insurance that are a little bit lower than what I anticipated. For total revenues or total appropriations for Department 271, I anticipate 29,350. They're going to come at 34,710 next year, 22,850. So that department in itself, I anticipated revenues over expenditures of 1,650. They're going to come in at 13,300 negative. And next year I anticipate 12,640 positive. So the assets, nothing there since 22. Reimbursements, nothing there since 22. And that's it. Nothing in 273. So I anticipated last year, I budgeted for 8,210 revenues over expenditures. It actually came in at 2,687. Next year, I anticipate 28,712. That's for the Albion building authority. All right, the next one is Maple Grove. For 2023, we budgeted for 533,750 for revenues. Actual revenue is gonna come in at 589,350. Next year, we anticipate 577,000. Total expenditures, we anticipate we're gonna be 394,000. They came in at 487,404. And next year, I anticipate 449,065. The main increase for the appropriations is on the building and grounds repair and maintenance. That 164,000 number includes 64,000 for pest control or bugs or whatever they're doing over there, bug program. That's all I know about it, but they think it's gonna cost 64,000. And next year, I budget for that line item 100,000. Everything else came in pretty much the same.
You got a zero again.
I don't know what, I don't control that. I don't know why that's doing that. I'll have to talk to the software people on that. It's, it's not doing that.
It's not carrying the 341 down. It's doing the math, it's just not.
So anyways, next year I anticipate 449,065 for total revenue, for total appropriations. This was, a lot of the expense numbers were sent over by the manager over at the Maple Grove. I pretty much handled all the revenues. And so we anticipated, last year, revenues over expenditures of 139,750. They're actually gonna come in at 101,946. And next year, I anticipate 127,935.
Yeah.
Yes. I was just thinking, isn't Maple Grove up for sale? And if it sells, what impact will it have on this budget?
This budget will go away.
And that
Whatever they spend before they sell the property will
Mhm.
be on here, but after they sell it, this fund will go away.
And that can be transferred.
Yeah, you're gonna take whatever we sell it for, it's close to hopefully 3 million. And we're gonna put that probably into the general fund and invest it for future projects.
With some level for streets.
I don't control that. That's something we can consider. That's a great idea.
Just saying,
Yeah.
3 million is such a. Beats.
But don't quote me on that 3 million. I don't know what they're gonna get for it, but they're gonna try to get as much as they can. All right, that's the special revenues fund. Next one I'd like to look at is the internal service fund. This is the equipment fund. This is the fund where all the equipment is kept. For all the street guys, DPW guys, water and sewer guys. This fund charges the other funds rent, for the equipment. And that's how this fund gets the revenue. So Fund 661 Equipment Pool Fund for 2023, I anticipated revenues at 392,025. We're actually gonna come in at 501,704. The main number is what we're charging for equipment rent. It's up about 124,000 and some change. Or excuse me, 121,000. Or excuse me, 119,000. The rents I anticipated were 60,025. They're gonna come in at 61,025. And the interest I anticipated 4,500. It's gonna come in at 6,250. So the total revenues, again, we're 501,704. Next year, I anticipate revenues of 503,525. The equipment rental is just about the same, the rents are just about the same, and interest is up a little bit. Total expenses for the equipment fund. I anticipated revenues or appropriations of 336,150. They're actually gonna come in at 389,146, which makes sense because more was rented out. So some of the numbers that you can look at that make that number a little bit higher is the materials and supplies. I anticipated 25,000, it actually is lower, 6,300. So that's good. The vehicle and equipment maintenance supplies, which is account 780, I anticipated 55,000, that came in lower by 33,000. Or excuse me, that came in at 33,000, so that was a $22,000 savings. The numbers that went up are the equipment rental of 48,500. This is what we pay to outside people for equipment. And we actually spent 126,700. And that's why that number on top is higher. I pass that cost on to the people who are using those departments that are using that equipment. And then depreciation, I anticipated 30,000, it's actually going to come in at 51,087. So all those numbers together is an increase of about 53,000. So if you take the revenues. Oh, and then we had transfers out, Department 965 transfers out. This is for the DPW building payment. And there's a footnote on that. So I anticipated for 2023 for the equipment fund, full fund, revenues of $392,025. Appropriations came in at $351,428. Or I anticipated appropriations of $351,428 with a profit of revenues over appropriations of $40,597. The actual number is going to be $97,280 positive, and next year I anticipate $82,658. So in a sense, this means that the equipment fund is charging enough to stand on its own and make a little profit. That's the only internal service fund that we have here at the city. And then the last packet is the other funds. So I see Bertie here. She put a lot of this together. She knows her funds. The 243 is a brownfield. 244 is an economic development fund. And the 247 is the TIPA fund. And the 248 is the DDA fund. I'll go over that. And the last one in here is the revolving loan fund, which is the 296 fund. So I'm gonna go over the DDA. And then if Bertie wants to go over her 4 funds. And I can answer any questions if they're needed, or at least try to. So the DDA fund, just fund 248, it does capture property taxes. There's a footnote on that. For 2023, I anticipated 170,582. It's actually going to come in at 186,682, and I project for next year 192,425. Property tax chargebacks, we didn't have any for the year. I did budget it. We didn't have any. I don't anticipate any next year. You just never know when those are going to come in. So it's hard to budget for them. Local grants, we didn't have anything next year. They did want to put in a grant. All these numbers come from the DDA. I'm just going through them. Interest. 2023 amended budget, I anticipated 8,000. It actually came in at 67,000, and next year I anticipate 10,000. So the total revenues for the DDA fund.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
508. Which is the DDA fund.
Yeah, sorry.
Should I start off at the top or?
No, it's good. I can read.
177,382 I budgeted for revenues. They're gonna come in at about 193,382. And next year, they anticipate 209,925 total revenues. Transfer out, there's a footnote on that. This goes to the brownfield, help pay for per contract. This has been going on for years. Since the brownfield started for the hotel and for the Rick Street. And I budgeted for 107,700. It's actually gonna be that, 107,700 next year. It's gonna be 110,000. Department 735, which is the DDA. These are, appropriations. Total revenues were 37,000. They're actually gonna come in at 25,665. The main, difference there is the, grants. This is 248,735, 870 account. I budgeted for 25,000, or they budgeted for 25,000. They only had 3 grant payments and they totaled 14,882. Next year, they anticipate 25,000. So I anticipated revenues over expenditures in Department 735 of 37,000. The projected number is going to be 20 or a negative 37,000 for 2023 amended budget. The actual numbers are going to be a negative 25,665, and next year they anticipate 47,770 negative. The farmers market, this is Department 737, is created in 2022. I anticipated revenue of 2,000 for the Department 737. Revenues actually came in at 1,500. Next year they anticipate 42 or 4,250. The appropriations, I anticipated 3,100. It came in at 1,922. Next year they anticipated 7,082. Professional fees, I didn't budget, or they didn't budget for anything. They actually had some for 6,678. This is for the Stofa Plaza. And the actual projected is going to be the same, 6,678, and next year they anticipate 5,000. So for the DDA fund in a whole, we budgeted last year for a profit of 31,582. The actual profit came in at 52,917 projected, and the requested budget for 2024 shows a profit of 44,333. And that was offered together by the DDA.
I think I sent out a brief memo on the EDC and the TIFA, RLF and the BRA budgets. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. This is only a draft because the EDC board has not approved this. I haven't had a chance to get it in front of them. The next EDC board meeting is November 2nd, so I'll make sure and add it to that agenda item. I don't know if you have any particular questions. I'll just kind of, yes.
Why is salary and wages tripling?
In the EDC budget. So you'll notice the revenue items at the top, $1 million in federal grants and $1 million in state grants. So if we're able to accomplish that, we will then also increase salaries. So evidently, while I was gone, there were some grants submitted, and I'm trying to catch up on what that was. And so for now, because I was asked to have something turned in for this meeting, I'm suggesting that this is the right staffing model to accomplish, if we were to accomplish those revenues. So one will be reflected by the other. The other large item that you'll see is the $1.3 million in contractual services, because we would assume that if we're able to accomplish those grants, we would have to hire that work done. So there's a staffing model that was put into place back in July that I was bringing to the board, the EDC board, and that includes about 4.5 FTEs, 3 full-time people and 3 part-time people. And so the staffing model represents that, that particular
model. That was the goal that the EDC board had given me when I first arrived, was by the end of the year, figure out what your real staffing model looks like. So that's what it is. We'll need to accomplish some revenue to be able to do that. But I'll also understand that it's not property tax revenue, it's other revenue. So the EDC fund is a bit self-sustaining. And that's the way that EDC fund kind of runs. So that's the 244. The VRA fund is kind of an in and out. As Director Clark mentioned, some of the money that we bring in comes in from the DDA. Most of the money that we pay out goes, they're brownfield payments. I would like to have a chance before this gets finalized, double check, because I kind of think the hotel is paid off. So I think that isn't gonna be as high, but I have only been back in the office about a week. So I gotta reacclimate myself to that. So I think the hotel is done and we only have Brick Street right now, so those numbers might change.
I
think we paid it off already. But I just can't speak to it. I believe we did, and that interest payment was the final payment. So I just have to go back and look at that, but I haven't had time since I've been back.
I talked with David about this earlier this morning. We're trying to figure out, because the document that he has shows that it was, what, a 12-year?
2,100,000.
Yeah,
So I believe it's already, the 7 years has expired, and I think that's why we made that interest payment, but again, I haven't been
It's
back
12
long
years.
enough. What's that?
It's 12 years,
Oh, okay.
so
yeah, so we're trying
I
to,
worked on that project. It's 12 years.
So I know the developer fee part is paid back, so maybe that's the part, but I've only been back a week, so I'm just saying it's only a draft.
Yeah.
And so we just, I think we really need to compare notes because it does impact what comes in from the DDA. So to be fair to the DDA, I just want to make sure that we're asking for the right money, but you're probably right, Councilman French, and I'm wrong, but I just need to look at it again before I say that this budget is correct. I'm sorry,
I have one question.
I'm sorry, what was that? Did you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Oh,
On the economic development, so 100,000 has been budgeted for 2024, is that in your memo? It just says line item economic development includes allowances for president, CEOs, meeting with board members, other agencies and potential developers for investments or monthly dinner meetings, is that
in the
solely
100,000.
for that, or is that a piece of the 100,000?
It's a piece of the 100,000. So one of the board members had asked to have something in the budget. Having just gotten back, I didn't have time to break it out of that 100,000, but that's typically the line that we use. Like in the prior year, it was a $75,000 budget. Again, like lots of stuff flowed through it. And I know there were lots of conversations about that last year, but it did sound like at least one board member wanted to make sure there was an allowance there, so it's in the 100, and I put it in the memo specifically, so when it gets to the board, the EDC board, they'll know where. They had asked me to put it in, I just wanted them to know where to find it.
Where is this? What account number?
244, and in
244 what?
244 is the fund,
244, 728, 96.
then there's another,
96 what?
967.
Oh, I see, okay, thank you.
Third from the bottom.
Yeah.
we had 78,000 as a budget for 23, of which we've only spent a small amount. And so we're projecting that might end up at 20,000, but we're saying that really to do economic development, we have to spend some money to get marketing and attract people. So that's that line item that we use for that.
Yes, thank you so much. City manager, can you, point me where your concern was at again? So I can kind of understand what the concern you have.
Oh, I was just looking at, so on page 2 of 8,
Okay.
it's 244, 728, 967 under economic development. I was just looking at the memo
Mm-hmm.
and just confirming that is that the full 100,000 for what was included in the memo, or is it just a piece of that? What's been budgeted? If that makes sense.
The board just had, the EDC board hasn't given a full direction on the dollar amount. There was just an email that said, can you include something?
Yeah, no, you answered my question, just clarifying for Councilmember Waller.
Thank you so much.
So Bridget, under the building rental. We're looking at $51,000 for 2024.
What page are you on?
Same page,
Same page, same.
941,
I'm sorry, what page?
page 2 of 8. 2 of 8.
Oh, I must have a different report, so,
So it's, on our list, it's free above economic development.
It was good.
okay, I'm on page 2 of 8, and I'm looking for what?
244-728-941, building rental. It goes from 18,000 for 2023 to 51,000.
That's not a good number.
51,000 or the 18.
The 51,000 is not a good number.
Okay.
We pay 12,000 a year, and I think 3/4 of it is in this fund, so it should be $9,000. So percent typo.
That should be 1,000.
I would say it should be 9,000.
So instead of
Oh, I see, you know, there shouldn't really be anything in miscellaneous. I'm sorry, yeah,
So that 9 plus that 3 is what? To get your 12,000 for the year?
well, I think 3,000 is in another fund, the TIPA fund, so I'm not sure what the 51 is, but. And I don't control the insurance and bond number, but that miscellaneous, I don't use that line item, so. That 3,000 probably doesn't belong there. And I can tell you the building and rental should probably be about 9. So I just don't know, sorry, I can't help you there, but I wouldn't have that 3,000 in the miscellaneous, and I would change the 51 to 9. And then I would just double check that insurance and bonds are really increasing to 9,000 instead of 3,200. But that's probably just something you're
These are the
in.
numbers that you sent over to me. So I just took your numbers.
Okay, then I made a big mistake, so, yeah.
And I don't know if we talked about the contractual services.
So the contractual services would be a reflection of if we get those grants, so we would be. For example, we have the 2 MISTA grants this year that are $500,000 each, so we know that in order to accomplish those, we have to spend that $450 out, and those go to contractors. So if these grants up here are similar to that, we know we would have to spend it. So it's really like, we just can't net any profit on those grants, and so we would need to spend what we have brought in.
So you're anticipating $1 million.
I'm still trying to catch up on what grants were applied for while I was gone, but I'm throwing in a couple of numbers. So that we can at least be staffing and discussing how we would accomplish the grants if they were won. So I don't know what the insurance and bond number is, because you would only know that, right? Like, I don't know what that number would be. So I think the 9 belongs where the 51 is, and then I don't think the 3, maybe the 3 is where the insurance and bonds was supposed to be. You know, that could be. Cause the miscellaneous, I don't use that one.
Yeah, I mean, I sent this back to you 3-4 times. and
Yeah, no, you're right, and here we are with another mistake I made, so I'm just saying, if we can fix it, then
I'm just saying that these are the numbers that were sent over to me, so I put them in.
okay.
And if they're wrong, they were sent over to me wrong.
I know, and I'm, so is there a mechanism to repair? Could I send you an email maybe? I'll send you.
Basically, you can take this printout and change any numbers that you want.
Yeah, I'll send it over. I'm really sorry for the mistakes. I apologize. And it is still a draft, so I still have to get it to the board. Any other questions? I'm sorry for the all mistakes. I didn't look at it.
Dr. Love? Thank you so much, Ms. Mayor. I don't mean to go back, but I gotta be able to understand this. Okay, right here it says line item economic includes allowances for the president, CEO to meet with board members, other agencies, and potential developers for refreshments, lunch and dinner meetings.
Where are you?
I'm on this, I think I'm on.
Oh, the memo.
No.
Yeah. So, I may be a little off, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. So you are able to go out and have expenditures for, lunch and dinner meetings?
We are, because we're not using property tax revenue. This is a self-sustaining fund in 244.
Do you have, I might be out of line, but do y'all have a process for like when you go out and talk to business people or just to keep it from being personal, the position? Does the position, does the EDC have, anything in place for the CEO person to allow them to go out?
So the email that came in from one of the board members asking to include this line item also was recommending a procedure. So I think that's coming in the recommendation from the board, but I haven't been able to get in front of them yet since I've been back. So I do think they're coming up with something.
So right now you don't have a process for
No,
procedure for when that position, that person in the position goes out.
right.
And you know.
There's no procedure right now. Anything else I can help with? I'm sorry, I was practically.
We look forward to that. Thanks.
All right, so, Director,
Going over everything, except the enterprise fund, which is a water and sewer fund, just gonna need a little bit more time to make sure that's right. There's a certain way we gotta handle all the bonds that we issued, and I just have not had time to put, I'm about 85% there. But with Kevin being gone and Elmer new to the position, he's been leaning on me quite a bit. I had to spend time with Jason for his investigation he's doing, and every time I try to get my head to it, I get interrupted and have to go somewhere else, so. But I hope to have that at the session whenever you guys have.
So, any council members have any other questions for Director Clark on the information that was given to us today? All right, future agenda items, do we have anything that council members would like to bring brought forward? All right, public comments?
Ms. Mayor,
Yes.
before you move on, obviously I wasn't here for the beginning of the meeting. The assistant city attorney was here. I was at a municipal meeting for another municipality, so I joined late. But it's my understanding that the request for conflict counsel didn't pass. I would strongly urge council to reconsider that decision. I want to be very clear by not approving that, where that leaves the city. By not approving conflict counsel, we have an active pending legal case without representation. I've articulated to council in closed session why I cannot continue on that case. And so if it's a matter of wanting to select another firm other than Fahey Schultz, that's fine. I can bring additional options. But with council not approving that, you're essentially, the city does not have representation on that case. So I would strongly urge you to reconsider that decision, because that puts the city at a very bad legal disadvantage.
So we would need one of the council members to oppose to bring it back to the table. Is that correct, Colin?
A motion to reconsider has to be made by somebody on the other side of the motion.
As we ask, we need somebody that could know, right? Yeah.
So being that this would, put in jeopardy the city of Albion, I will make that motion.
Ms. Mayor, I believe you were somebody that, I don't know, whoever voted against approval is who would need to move to reconsider.
And that's happened.
Yeah. So I was
Okay, she
wondering-
made the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. Councilwoman.
Does this have to be a separate agenda item, or are we adding an item, or can you refresh my memory about how that goes? About, she's getting ready to, well, I don't wanna say you are, but it sounds like it,
I'm making a motion to reconsider.
okay, so it doesn't have to be an agenda item, or we have to say,
No. It's already an agenda item. You're just reconsidering the vote that you took on the agenda item. So someone that voted against approval of that agenda item would need to make a motion to reconsider that vote. You need a second, and then you can have discussion on the motion to reconsider, and then you vote.
Like second.
So you said discussion, but really can't discuss.
Because it's a closed session.
Correct, Colin?
Yeah, so the substance of why you're retaining conflict counsel was done in closed session. I've presented several firms to the council. This seemed to be the one that council was interested in and that I recommend. I think they're a fantastic municipal firm, and I would recommend approving them to take this case over.
Councilwoman.
thank you so much, Ms. Meter. So if you have a conflict, Colin, how can you refer somebody? Because I have a problem with that.
I'm not. If your question is, how can I recommend somebody?
Yes,
Is that-
if you have a conflict of interest, how can you refer somebody?
Because it's not, because I don't stand to gain from another firm taking over. I just need to put somebody in to take over the case that does not have a conflict.
So can somebody else, consider somebody else besides you considering somebody?
You guys can hire whatever attorney you want. I brought the council several firms to choose from, but as I've indicated to council, we're running out of time. We have dates coming up, and because of that short time period, that's why I've been requesting council take action on this.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we have a motion and a support. City Clerk Domingo?
Councilmember Waller,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
So like I said, Mayor and Council, I just want to be very clear where that puts you. Because I don't have any options on this case, and unfortunately, council's put me in a position where I can't continue. So I just want to make that clear.
Attorney Hartman, so does this mean you will have no representation as this case proceeds?
As it currently stands, without a conflict counsel to come in, normally what would happen on a case is when you have conflict counsel, you retain another attorney and you do what's called the substitution of attorney, and that attorney steps in and takes over kind of seamlessly. In this particular case, I have no option other than I have to file a motion to withdraw, and assuming the judge grants that, which they almost always do, the city's left without representation on this case. And that's a problem. I don't want the city to be in this position.
Yeah, I just have a statement, when attorneys go in to represent somebody and they make a, suggestion of what they should do about it. In court, sometimes, the person will go against what their attorney say, and their attorney still, represents them, so, I just know you can do it. I really do. I just know you can do it.
This is not that situation, Councilwoman Lawler. I'm just making that very clear. This is not that situation. If I could continue to represent the city, I would. This is not that situation.
Are we able to give the public a reason why, or it has to stay in closed session?
It was in closed session.
It can't come to the public or no?
Information discussed in closed session is not made public, no.
So there's no other way you can explain it to the public?
Yeah, I can tell council and the rest of the public that because of the Michigan rules of professional conduct and because I have consulted with the state bar regarding whether or not I should continue on this case, and that with the information that I provide you in closed session, I need to have conflict counsel take this case over.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, try it again. Councilman Lawler, if we called again, we would change your vote.
I mean, should be able to run, could be able to, okay.
Oh, right, that's right. All right.
So what do we do?
We can discuss future agenda items.
Future agenda items? Councilmember comments?
Future agenda items, I'd like to bring this back and we've got 3 more city councilmen present.
So,
Consideration. In this meeting.
any other future agenda items?
And then other field stuff we could discuss.
Public comment? Anybody? Chandler?
Dave Atchison, 108 West Street. Here, Albion. I believe at the last council meeting, both Councilmember French and Mayor talked about the concerns and complaints that you've been receiving from various members of the community on the ethics and violations of law that took place on the 15th of August. And I believe you indicated that at the next council meeting, that would be discussed, and you've been working with the city attorney on how to proceed. And I'd like clarification or assurance that, yeah, that's going to be on Monday's meeting, and whether or not you're going to go through the process of enforcing the ethics ordinance. What took place was an absolute abomination of anything you could refer to as due process. It was absolutely unfair to those members. They weren't even notified in advance. Members of this council blocked every attempt, wouldn't let you go into closed session. Councilman French asked for 1 week to get more information. Nope, give us more information only because you want to change your mind. That's not how this is supposed to be governed. That's totally inappropriate. And I'm looking forward to the ethics ordinance and enforcement of accountability for conduct that's outside the law, violates the charter, and just tramples all over that ethics ordinance. Thank you.
Anybody else in the gallery that would like to come forward? Councilmember comments? Councilman Law?
Thank you so much. For some reason, I'm just stuck on the process of the alliances of, the position of the president, CEO, the EDC. He said there was no process. So I'm just trying to see if, I don't know if we can answer this question or not. It's, do you get, when that position goes out to meet with these people, what is the past practice of this position going to say, hey, I need, I'm going out to lunch. I'm gonna need to probably pay something, or, if I decide to pay for it, however the scenario goes, but when that person goes out, and they don't have, a procedure or a process, what has been the past practice for that? Do we know that, what it is? Can we ask her?
So if I could just weigh in, so when all of this started, we consulted with our auditors, because right now they follow, we handle all of the financials for the EDC. We do the city, they also fall under our handbook unless they have their own further bylaws. We do not have a policy that addresses that. We do have, if you attend trainings or conferences, you are able to purchase your meals and then submit for reimbursement, but to just go out unless it's purchasing something for the public good, we do not allow that, or we do not have a process or policy that addresses that. Our auditors did advise, if this is the route that the board would like to take, a formal policy would need to be created. Parameters need to be put in place. If that were to happen, pre-authorization would need to be given by the board as well. So I don't believe there is a set policy yet, but it sounds like from what Ms. Ammerman said, the board is looking to come up with some type of process.
So what past practice with the EDC, do we know if they just give people with this position the county say, oh, use it, do they have to get information from their board, or
But
they still, if they don't have it, it fall under us?
Yes, correct.
So I'm just trying to make sure this position knows if nothing is in place, then our city manager has to do what she has to do, but I wanna know the past practice of what's before, she had a concern about, you had a concern about anything, which is a valid concern, because that's what your process is. And this board does not have a process. I just wanted to know the past practice. If I could get it at a later date, that would be fine, but I just want to be able to understand.
I can comment that, when I worked for the college and worked with, the prior, president of the EDC, they didn't do that.
They didn't allow that
they would,
position and go out and talk to people?
no, they would talk to people, but they wouldn't pay for meals. They just didn't. They would buy their own meals, or they would not meet over meals. They would just meet. And, if there was coffee in the office, they'd have coffee in the office, but they didn't have the budget for it. And so they just didn't do it. So, so this is new, and I'm not objecting to it. In my world, I do that all the time. So we just have to establish some policy and procedures so that we're above board.
Director Clark?
I think when this all came up, I think Haley wanted me to post some invoices for the past EDC president to look and see what she was being reimbursed for. And there was not a lot of food and entertainment on there, if not. Anything that was being reimbursed was for public as well. I think we saw a couple of gatherings at the EDC where public was invited, and there was some expenses that were reimbursed, but I didn't find anything where the EDC CEO was going out and dining potential prospects or whatever you want to call it.
But but they are able to do that as long as they have what do they need to have if they fall under us on their receipt.
After speaking with the auditor, a policy needs to be put in place with parameters. If you're doing something like that and you submit receipts, you usually generally note who the meeting was with or who it was for, but some sort of supporting documentation that would go on.
Okay, like just a receipt, or do it have to be something written on the receipt?
Oh, sure.
Well, it's not only a receipt, but you need to tell why and
Yes, the
what,
purpose
where
of,
and why the meeting was being done. And then you can decide, was it something for the public or something other?
So
This is wondering what.
as far as practice was when I was in the role, the board chairs, I've had multiple board chairs, they had signed off on the expense report and signed off on the charges because we had had conversations and they had said, we understand what you're doing. Sometimes when I entered a receipt, I just wrote potential developer or potential project on the receipt because at the time we weren't able to disclose who that was yet. So there's lots of conversations that have gone on about this, and it's clear that it's been a frustration. I think a policy that's in writing will definitely benefit this. I do want to say, in all fairness, that the person who was in this seat prior to me, one of the big things that I was asked to do differently than that person was be in the community and be seen and be visible. And this is part of being seen and being visible. The past EDC president, because she was here mostly during COVID, pretty much worked from home and there were no external meetings. We didn't have a lot of development work going on. So it is a little bit of a different time and flavor. And we have a lot of opportunities right now, but, and the board chair had approved. It's just, it wasn't, it was very uncomfortable for everybody involved.
I'm just making a point that there does need to be a process, and I mean, knowing about like what past practices are. I know it does fall up under, me and my city manager, we talked about some things and I understood, her concerns and things like that, but, what I'm really see if they gonna do that process, that really, needs to be put in place. It's important. You just can't just tell people go spending city money and, I don't know if that's what happened, but I really just like to see the process.
All right, do I have a motion to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Jackson and Councilman Williams?
Yes. So moved.
So I had a motion. Do I have support?
It's just the two of them, you're
Yeah.
saying? Yes, oh, support.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Support.
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. Meeting adjourned, 7:54 p.m. Thank you all.
Just a quick announcement regarding hire. The smoke detector training is tomorrow.